Also, I would like to, introduce Chrissy. So Chrissy is an award-winning singer and songwriter. So she has written "My Body is My Body" program, that is a free musical animated body safety program for the children. And her program has been translated, as she said in the beginning, into many languages and created major impacts on the masses. So I would like to invite her to please share your opinion and thoughts on this very specific topic.
Okay, thank you very much, Sona. It's a pleasure to be here today and to be able to share with you. The biggest problem with child abuse, child maltreatment, is that we don't talk about it enough. And the My Body is My Body program is a different way of trying to address the problem, the massive problem that we've got in the world today of child abuse. This problem affects over 1 billion children every year, all around the world. And we can't say that any one country is got less or more. Children of all socioeconomic places are abused. You know, it doesn't matter from what culture, what religion you come from, children everywhere are abused in different places. So we have to talk about this. We have to educate parents, we have to educate teachers, and we have to educate children to protect themselves. So the My Body program uses a different approach, using music and positivity. I think the biggest problem why we don't talk about child abuse is because we feel uncomfortable. We don't know how to approach the subject. So by using fun animation songs, you can bring up the subject with children and then have discussions. That is really what the program's all about, is because we need to talk about it and we need to find positive, empowering ways to show our children that they have a right over their body. I was sexually abused as a child, so I know how you feel. I know what happens to you. And I know that most children clam up and go, I'm not telling anybody because I'm going to get into trouble, or somebody's not going to believe me, or they're going to think that I'm a bad person because I've been abused. So we have to show children that they have a right to say no. And they also have a right to go and tell that something is happening to them, that they need help. So the My Body program does that because it's got different songs, and each song tells a story about how to tell about a problem, or what to do if something feels uncomfortable, or that you shouldn't be keeping secrets. So it's all good ideas and good subjects to teach children, and it just opens the lines of education, of communication. So just to give you an idea with child maltreatment, child abuse, 80% of substance abusers are abused children. 80% of runaways are abused children. 95% of prostitutes have been sexually abused. And 78% of our prison populations around the world are abused children. 50% of suicides are also abused children. So when you look at what an impact abuse has in our society, it is absolutely staggering. And we should all be working towards this. We should all be interested in what's happening to the children in our communities. How can we talk? How can we educate? How can we get parents educated? Children that are abused suffer from low self-esteem, emotional problems, depression, anxiety, eating disorders, PTSD, suicidal thoughts, difficulty with forming relationships with people. And if children are abused before the age of 7, their neurological, the neurons don't connect properly. And these children don't learn like other children. So what happens is these children are not only at a disadvantage from being abused, they are at a disadvantage because they won't ever learn as well as other children. And I think if parents could understand what happens to their children when they're abused, because a lot of times parents and communities will turn a blind eye because it's a difficult subject, or maybe it's too hard to talk about, too difficult to deal with. So they let the child, as I say, they turn a blind eye to the child. And that is such a terrible problem, because the child not only is being abused, they also feel like they're being abandoned because the parents or the carers don't care enough to stand up for them. So we have to show people what to do in society, how to deal with this, how to cope. And as I say, I do it through the My Body is My Body program, and we're using it in over 50 countries at the moment in 19 languages. And the reason why we use music is because studies have proved that music and learning new songs relate to a more positive self-concept. And it helps develop self-esteem. It helps children feel better about themselves. And the most important thing is that the children remember the songs. You will all remember little songs that you learned as a child, and you'll know them when you're 80 years old, because they're in there. You've sung them, and you've had good experiences with them. So that is why the music is important. And it's so funny, because if you teach the children the songs, not only the children know them, the parents know them, the grandparents know them. Somebody was saying the other day when we'd done one of the songs that the grandmother was doing the cooking and she was singing the My Body song as she was cooking. So, it's a positive way of imparting difficult information. So, I just can't enforce the reason why we need to decide to discuss this problem. And as we were talking earlier, it's not only giving the children that haven't been abused the power to say no, or know that they can go and talk to somebody. It's giving children that have been abused the knowledge that they're not the only ones out there that are being abused. It is happening to other children. They're not alone, and they can get help. I know as a child, I never knew that other people got abused. I thought, oh, this is something that's just happened to me, because nobody talked about it, And so I never spoke about it till I was 30. And I told my mom when I was 30, and I was actually doing this program that allowed me to share that I was abused with other children and tell them how I felt. And that helped so many other children to talk about it, to reveal that they had been abused, and also to just get it out. It's so important to be able to discuss this subject and how you feel, how it makes you feel and how you can get over it. And I don't think you can get over it till you can start discussing it, till you start imparting that information and sharing and understanding why you may be acting in a certain way. So I don't know how much time I've got left. So Sono?
No, you can please go ahead. We are noting
Okay.
down. You are talking something about emotional intelligence that I will later reflect. It's very important. So please continue.
Okay, so I just want to go through a couple of the pointers that we teach children. So with the My Body song, we say we've got bodies, and as you can keep it very simple. But a lot of parents will say, oh, I don't want to teach my child about sex, but we're not teaching children about sex. I'm going to tell you exactly how to do it. You say to a child, you have a wonderful body and it's the only one you get. It's yours and it belongs to you. And you have hair and you have legs and you have arms and fingers and you have private parts. Now, private parts are where your underwear or your swimsuit covers. And nobody should be touching your private parts because they belong to you. Now, I know some people use the good touch, bad touch way of teaching, but I personally don't like it for young children, because you're trying to make that child decipher what is a good touch and what is a bad touch. Now, somebody might touch you gently, but inappropriately. So is that a good touch? Is that a bad touch? It's not hurting. So you're making the child try to decipher what it is. So I like to keep it simple. Simple rules for kids. You have private parts, nobody touches them. And if somebody does try, you say no and you tell. And then you give the child, there's only 2 times that somebody would ever touch your private parts. One, when you're very little, your mom and dad would have to bathe you and they would wash your private parts. But as you get older, you learn how to wash your own body. The only other time is if you are sick or sore and you have to go to a doctor, or you have to have medicine put there. But if you feel uncomfortable, you can always put your own medicine there. Or when you go to the doctor, you will be with your parents or your carer. You won't be alone with the doctor. So, but apart from that, nobody should ever be touching your private parts, and nobody should ever take photos of your private parts. So very simple rules for kids. And that's all we do. And then we do the My Body song, and then you ask them questions. Do you have any questions about that? And kids might say, well, if I'm sitting on somebody's lap and they're putting their arms around me and I feel uncomfortable, can I say no? Yes, you can say no. If somebody does something that makes you feel uncomfortable, you can say no. I also tell parents that if you are meeting parents, if you're meeting family or friends and you say to your child, go and hug uncle, go and hug auntie, and the child's going, no, I don't want to, don't force your child, because you don't know why they don't want to hug. Maybe that person's done something that makes them feel uncomfortable. We don't ever want children to grow up thinking that they have to do things with their bodies that they're not comfortable with. It's a really good premise for young girls, young boys to grow up with, that they don't feel beholden to somebody to share their bodies or to do things with their bodies. If we can teach children to grow up and be empowered and say, this is mine, I don't want to do that. And I say to parents, you can teach your child still to be respectful. They can say, they can shake hands, or they can bow, they can do respectful things if they don't want to hug, but don't force them. It's just really, really important to impart that to children. It's their body and they have a right over their body. We also have a song called If It Don't Feel Right, Don't Do It, which again, we talk about feelings. You're happy, you're sad, you're angry, you're anxious, you've got all sorts of feelings that we feel. But if something doesn't feel right inside and somebody makes you feel uncomfortable, or somebody wants you to do something that you know is wrong, or go somewhere that your parents don't think is a good idea, listen to the rule. If it don't feel right, don't do it. So again, we're just putting ideas into the kids' heads, and because it's in a song, they remember the song. They think about all these things, and with that song, we can talk about bullying. We can talk about peer pressure. So these songs help you bring in difficult subjects to talk about the child, to the child. We've got a what if game, that a song that you can use all sorts of scenarios. Look in the newspaper, what's happening in your community. Something's happening or somebody's preying on children, you can say to the kids, what if this happens? What would you do? And you give them ideas. You make them think. What would I do? And then it's in their brains. Most children are so preoccupied with their phones or their friends or all these sort of things. They're not paying attention to what's going on around them. So if somebody came up to them and said, oh, have you seen my puppy? And they said, no. oh, please come help me find my puppy. You know, just come with me. I'll bring you right back, but I've got to find my puppy. The child would probably go with them because they'd think, yeah, I'll go with you. But we have to talk to them and say, if it's a stranger, we don't go with strangers. Over 90% of abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, sexual abuse, is all perpetrated by adults that they know, or teenagers, sorry, not the adults, because people can be in their family, they can be adults, they can be teenagers, and they can be other children that can be doing things to them. It's everybody. But we need to explain to children that strangers are people we don't know, and we don't go with strangers. I would like to say that people that pedophiles in communities work really, really hard at their jobs of building themselves into the community. So they will work themselves in, and people will feel comfortable leaving their children with them. And you'll be surprised at the amount of children that pedophiles will abuse in their lifetime. And I'm talking hundreds of children. They make sure they work hard to getting into communities. I mean, I can give you an example of the doctor that worked with the Olympic children, and he abused, I think, something like 150 girls, and the girls were saying, this doctor's doing something to me that's inappropriate. And the parents were going, oh, no, he's wonderful, he's lovely, he'd never do anything like that. And they took his side over their own children because they had this thing in their mind that this guy was great and good, and he, you know, bent over backwards to do things for everybody. So look for people like that in your community that are doing over and above with your children, that want to take your children away to places. You know, we're going away for the weekend, let's take your children with me. You know, make sure you know who it is and prepare your child. That, you know, we can't be with our children 24 hours a day, and they are going to go out into the world, and they are going to be at other people's houses, and we have to prepare them to say no. If somebody tries to touch me or do anything that makes me feel uncomfortable, I can say no, and then I will tell my mom and dad immediately. If it's happening in the family and people aren't listening to you, tell somebody out of the family, your teachers, you know, your spiritual leader, somebody that you can talk to, or go to the police station somewhere. But keep telling till somebody helps you. I could go on for an hour, and I know I don't have a lot of time, but basically, you know, if you want to have a look at the program on mybodyismybody.com, have a look at each song. And if you've got anything that's troubling you about your child, talk to them. Honestly, the biggest thing that I can say is that we can do is open the lines of communication, talk about the subject. It's amazing how many people that when you start talking about the subject come up and say to me, actually, I was abused as a child, or this happened to me as a child, and they've never ever told anybody before. So we have to give everybody, we have to protect our children, we have to protect our teenagers from, if they have been abused, to give them a means to talk and share and get help. And we have to also do exactly the same thing for our adults as well. So if you
Yeah, actually, you know, it's outstanding, I must say, because see, I am a very technical guy. You know, I keep myself at least 10 hours per day with surrounding technologies, you know. But when I heard whatever you just said, I think my team needs to spend some time, you know, with your show. Okay, they have to visit your website, and we have to figure out. So I would like to invite Dunstan. So before that, I'd like to introduce him. He is a strategic advisor to Royal Family, and he's also the ambassador of Goodwill Foundation, Milano Foundation, and bunch of other organizations as well. And he also won several awards, definitely in his long career of more than 30 years. So it's a pleasure to have you, sir, on our this session. So I would like to welcome you to please share your opinion and thoughts on the topic.
Yeah, thank you, Sonu, and thank you, Chrissy. Nice being in a platform with both of you. See, the topic what we have taken today is a highly sensitive topic of child abuse or child maltreatment. But equally, it is also a great concern with the entire society as to how we are going to handle it. Now, what is abuse or what is maltreatment? It is an act either by word or by action without a consent, without the other person's consent. Okay, so that is what we are calling it as an abuse or a maltreatment. Now, if you like how Chrissy has mentioned, she has given a lot of statistics. There's more than 1 million plus children who are being abused in a year, and there is more than about 4 to 5 children dying every day because of this aspect. Now, the sad part of child abuse or malnutrition is because a small child trusts people very, very much, whom are very close to them, be it parents, be it their caretakers, be it their teachers, be it their friends or relatives, because they are all known to them, so they trust. The amount of trust the child had on them is very high. But unfortunately, it is out of these, majority of the abuse is happening. Okay, so what happens is the child gets traumatized. He or she doesn't know what to do because her trust is completely devastated, because a parent whom he trusted is abusing her, a friend abusing her, caretaker abusing her, driver abusing her. So this is why in today's society, these people are very reluctant to come out and speak because they're all known to them. How can a child go and say, my parent has abused me? He or she will not do it. So what I would suggest, what my view is, educating the child as well as the parent, like what Chrissy said. She's doing a wonderful program for educating the children to believe in their body and say that it is my body. Yes, I have to maintain my body. Nobody has got the right to touch it. So that is a wonderful thing. And second is, see, today we have moved towards a nuclear family concept, basically because of the work nature. Everybody moved out from earlier. If you see in my generation, I mean, my parents and all, we were all staying in a joint family. So we had grandmothers, grandfathers, a lot of people were there whom the child could open up or share. But today we are in a world where you have a working father and a working mother. The child is alone. The child goes to school, come back, stays at home. So she or he doesn't have anybody to confide to, because the parents are so busy. Even when they come back home in the night, they are very busy in meeting their daily routine works and then again catching up for work next day. So they don't have time to share with the child. So again here, there a gap is forming between the child and the parents. Okay, so here again, here also, unless we teach the child to share everything that happens, if we take time, the mother or father take time every day at some particular point, spend time with the child and ask what happened on that particular day, how did the day go, what all things were happened. I'm sure the child will be able to open up and share many of these things. Second, when the child is young, the brain, the mind or the brain requires a lot of care to take care of because that is a time where the character, behavior, psychological developments happening. And at that particular point of time, if something like an abuse or a maltreatment happens, all these things, the brain gets compromised, and it will not be in a position to develop. And that is how, if you see, the child develops a lot of psychological disorders like autism, speaking disabilities. A lot of things happens, which we may not be able to identify why suddenly the child is becoming like this. But it is because of a traumatic experience that the child had in the past. So, an early detection of a child, immediately when you notice the child is different from what he or she was, it is high time that we counsel and find out. Because what happened is, when they go through a traumatic experience, they become, their character changes. They become disobedient, they become rebellious, they don't talk to people, they try to confine themselves within them inside a room or whatever like that. So these are the things that we should be observing closely, and parents, of course, they play a major role in this, of course, and teachers, because these are the two people who are spending the maximum time with the child. So these two have a very, very important role to play in identifying the difference in characters and to judge what has happened to the child in those periods. So coming back to maltreatment or abuse, it is something can be changed only by education. See, if you read the biographies of some of the very, very notorious psychopathic killers or serial killers, they all had a abuse past. That is why they have become like that. In a similar manner, if you see many people who have come across such things today, if you see, like Chrissy said, many people are opening up. They are, because of the abuse they had experienced earlier. Today, after 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, they are opening up and they are trying to see how something of that sort cannot happen to the next generations to come. And that is a great effort, because if they also keep quiet, we can change the society. And the second thing, the most important thing, as you said, is how we treat this. Like today, if you see in India and all, if you give a complaint and if the person is arrested, he hardly gets about 4, 5 years or 10 years maximum, and he comes out. The law is such that it is not very, very stringent. But in places like the Gulf, Middle East and all, Saudi Arabia or Dubai, it is so tough that you just cannot think of such a thing happening, because if it comes to the knowledge of the authorities, that's it. That's the end of it. So there has to be a law that is very stringent in such things. I mean, it is not that they should be given lifetime sentence or something. The next day they should be hanged. That's all. So that it is a clear message to everybody. A similar case happened in Delhi, where a teenager was raped in a bus. It took about 5 to 6 years to identify and to give a verdict that yes, these are the guys who did it. That should not be the case. That should not be the case. So my conclusion is that whether it is abuse or maltreatment. See, why I am calling it maltreatment, because even when a child is being scolded in a classroom in front of about 30 students, the child gets traumatized. It is equivalent to an abuse. Okay, so the teacher has to have a conscious relationship with the child, and punishment has to be given. It is not that it is not to be given, but it can be done in the most manner that the child doesn't get inferior or traumatized in front of the other kids. So like that. Similarly, a caretaker or a granny, when the parents are not there, they left and right, they take the kids for a ride. And the kids will not tell the parents. If the granny goes and feed the child doesn't eat, she or he will give him a slap. and the child has to go through all those abuse. So these are all things that is happening in the children, and children are so light, like a flower. We have to handle them with care. And at that age, if you don't do it, we will not be in a position to develop good citizens for the generations to come. So early education, making the child aware of its body, stringent laws to take care of people who are abusing are all some of the key factors that has to be taken into consideration while we are considering this topic. And thank you, Sonu, for this opportunity. And thank you, Chrissy, and thank you, Nancy.
Yeah, so thank you so much, sir, for your opinion.
Well done.
So I think it's a very well compiled in a very understandable manner. Thank you so much for your time. So I would like to now request you. So let me introduce you. Nancy is the CEO and managing partner at IBIS, and she is also the director of international relations at Farco Corporation. So please share your opinion on this topic.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, and thank you for allowing me to be with my mentor, Chrissy Seeks. And of course, it's such a great honor to meet you, sir, as well, and also to meet our other expert on the panel. It's a great honor. I like to also identify myself in a couple of other short ways. Number one, I'm an advocate for child abuse prevention. I'm actually the director of child welfare for the Global Goodwill Ambassador and My Body is My Body joint program. It's a core initiative for Global Goodwill Ambassadors. And actually, I've been involved with Chrissy with the My Body is My Body program and helped to introduce the program into Egypt and to try to expand it. Coming from a developing country. Well, I was born and raised in the US, but now living in a developing country, a culture, one with a very distinct and very, I should say, traditional culture, regardless of whether the Christian or the Muslim communities. I find that not only is it an important topic, but also how to be able to present the topic and how to advocate for child abuse prevention within different cultures can be very difficult. Sometimes when you're dealing with a closed, how should I say, a high context culture like Egypt, like India, like China, I mean, compared to maybe Western countries like in the US and in the UK. At the same time, I like to identify myself as a mother. I am a mother of two amazing children. They are older now, 25 and 27. So as a mother, of course, I know the feeling of wanting to protect your children and being nervous when your children are not underneath your eyes and you don't know where they are and you don't see them the whole day. So you don't know who they're being exposed to or what they're being exposed to. I also, if you allow me, I'd like to identify myself as a victim of child abuse myself from, unfortunately, someone who I knew. So I can understand very well in all of those different shoes how difficult of a topic and how important of a topic it is and how we have to begin. So again, I took on this responsibility, I guess, because it is a responsibility to try to see what I can do within my culture. I live in a country now of over 100 million people. It's not as populated as Nigeria or as India, but it's a very large population. Egypt is divided into 27 different governorates, and each governorate is quite different. So when we talk about the governorate of Cairo versus some of the Upper Egypt governorates, the culture, even within those governorates, can be quite different. So being able to present this material to parents of a private American school in Cairo, although it was amazing, it was a different experience from doing it in some of the least developed villages, in some of the poorest communities, where those people are very traditional and they don't really normally like to have conversations about the body, especially about private parts. So a lot of times it's a bit taboo, the subject, but it really involves a number of things. It involves, of course, and I'm speaking now as an advocate, having the tools, having the knowledge myself to be able to go and benefit other people or advocate for the cause. So I found myself able to do that by working through the My Body is My Body program, because I found a complete child abuse prevention program, one that has information for me to get aware, to make myself aware of the phenomena itself of child abuse and different techniques on how to prevent it, but also having the tools to work with teachers, to work with parents, and to work with the children themselves. The other part, of course, is having the, we are talking to society. Even before we talk to the children, we are talking to society. We are raising awareness about an issue. We're putting it on the list of the agenda, like as a priority, as a topic that people really need to take seriously. Just like now we are talking about the pandemic, and we're talking about the adverse effects of the pandemic and preventative measures of getting sick, like washing our hands and taking a lot of vitamins, and also even the vaccine. So we're talking about prevention. It's the same thing with child abuse, because we have different conversations when it comes to child abuse. Normally, we, and I'm speaking we again, as a developing country, we tend to be reactive. So we tend to wait until there is a problem. And then when there is a problem, we talk about, oh, look what happened. You know, we have this recently in the news, there was this gentleman, they call him the Maadi molester, because he was caught on camera and also by some of the neighbors, suspectedly molesting a child. Although I strongly believe you are innocent until proven guilty. I don't, accuse anyone unless the courts say, yes, we have the evidence and this person is guilty. But in this case, it really raised a lot of emotions among Egyptians, because people were saying, oh my God, did you see what that man did to that child? It was outrageous. And even though this is a conversation we chose as a community to kind of keep hush-hush about, we don't want to talk about it. We as Egyptians, we never like to say, oh, we have killers, we have, molesters, we have people with alternative lifestyles among us. No, we don't want to admit any of that or say any of that. And I'm not saying judgment against, people of alternative lifestyle. Because my upbringing, my Western mentality or Western upbringing is I leave everyone to God. God is the best judge. But when it comes to an individual who's harming other people, when they are harming our children, I don't leave that. That requires then intervention from the whole community. And in this case, what I have found in presenting this program in different communities in Egypt is I have found, although I oftentimes find myself with the red cheeks when I'm talking about specific taboo or sensitive topics, I find that the people are accepting of it. They're starting to say, we need to have this conversation. And I always use this, the sentence is, if you don't talk to your children about the human body, about private parts, about sex, they will hear this conversation and they will get the information, but from somewhere else. And oftentimes when they get it from other places, it's not the best way, the way the information gets to them. And this is important for us to remember. If we are worried about what will people think, because this is something we as Egyptians, we say often, our parents used to say it to us all the time. What are you wearing? What will people say? What will the neighbors say when they see you walking in the street with the short skirt? Or what will, we're always concerned about what our neighbors will say, what our aunts will say, and I know that's the same in India as well, or any, again, high context culture. We're connected, we're a system, we're a community. So it matters what other people think about us. At the same time, it's an honor society. So if I'm talking to my children about private parts, people will say, oh my gosh, these people are so modern. They're not traditional at all. How can they talk to their children about these things? Again, I go back and say, but what if our child, let's look at the worst case scenario, and our child is exposed to something like that. They're exposed to sort of childhood sexual abuse. Or something, in that range. What then will the people say? When we have to deal as a reactive, isn't that a bigger problem? And parents, they dread, their fear that the person who is causing this abuse to their child is someone they know, because then what happens? In a community or in a society in Egypt or India where we're very close-knit, where everybody is, you know, opening the door without knocking and walking into each other's homes and sharing meals together and stuff, how do you then face that family when one of the members of that family has abused your child? I mean, how then you must cut off relations, or how does that work? Especially if the police are involved. So, you know, it's a very complicated situation. And this is why you need tools to be able to prevent, to educate, to prepare your children. They need to understand the world is not a horrible or scary or you know, dangerous place, but there are very bad people out there. There are good people there and there are bad people there. And you don't want your child to not have a childhood. You don't want your child to live in fear all the time, but you want your child to be vigilant and to be prepared and to be able to differentiate between appropriate and inappropriate behavior, regardless of who it is from. Because again, when we're talking to the families, the parents, the teachers, even the children, and we talk about the 5 safe adults or trusted adults, we say, but if any one of those 5 does anything that we can define as inappropriate, then we take them off that list right away. They're no longer safe adults. Because again, as I had kind of caught in your session, was it could be the closest people, it could be the father, it could be the mother, it could be the uncle or the grandfather, it could be a very close relative. And in this case, you know, I'm talking again as a traditional culture like an Egyptian or Middle Eastern or African culture, you know, how do we deal with that? Maybe in the West, it's a bit more cut and dry, because even the way the family's unit is a bit different. You know, there is the immediate and then the extended, whereas in the Middle East, everybody's immediate, you know, even the extended family. So this makes it a bit more complicated. More people are coming into the house, more people are going out of the house. Here we have this concept of hospitality. Oh, he's a stranger, but he needs a place to stay. But I'm allowing strangers in my home. So, you know, there is this sort of extra level of danger, because we want to say in our minds that this is not part of our society. Oh, no, this is a Muslim household. These things don't happen here, you know, or my child knows very well, and he is trained and he is educated and he will know what to do. But how will he know what to do? Was he born with this knowledge? Did he have this information somehow instilled in him? How does he know how to act or what to do if I don't tell him? So it's my job as a parent, it's my job as a community leader, it's my job as a teacher or a guidance counselor or a loved one to prepare my children for those situations where they may come across these bad guys, you know, that act inappropriately. And again, it's raising that awareness. It's having the tools to be able to do it. It's understanding the culture that you're going to be working in or training in. Because like I said, even in Egypt, I deal with different subcultures. When I'm talking to an elite family of a child in one of the most elite or, you know, expensive private American schools in Cairo, it's very different from when I'm dealing with a family in one of the least developed, you know, rural communities in Upper Egypt. And when I'm dealing with the Nubian culture, it's different from when I'm dealing with a family in Alexandria or an orphanage. So depending on the children, are they homeless, or we call them street children? Are they orphans? Are they sick children where they have like certain chronic illnesses, like children that are hospitalized for cancer, or they have heart conditions or any sort of congenital conditions? So this puts them in the category of most vulnerable, because like a child with Down syndrome may not be able to describe to the parents as much if they've been abused as a child who doesn't have Down syndrome. So also dealing with children with disabilities or special needs, how to be able to educate them in the way that they can understand what you're trying to say to them, the messages, to be able to really say, okay, so if uncle does this, then that's bad. Then I have to tell mommy, you know? And again, so there were two parts really, is educating the children themselves and educating the society and the community to have the conversation. Because if they do not have this conversation, our children will not be safe. If we're not able to really have like a sort of a neighborhood watch, like I know in the United States where I grew up, our neighbors, we had a sort of neighborhood watch. So if any of the neighbors noticed anything suspicious or they saw someone acting very strange or driving through the neighborhood, especially during the holidays like Halloween, when I was young, we used to go from door to door and collect candy from strangers' houses. But the neighborhood watch would be like, oh, we saw somebody, a single man driving around his car, you know, watching the kids as they were trick-or-treating. We need to call the police, you know? So there's a sort of neighborhood watch. So as we know, it takes a village and sometimes a whole country to raise a child. We need to have this as part of a community effort. We need to come together. We need to work together. It can't just be Chrissy. It can't just be Nancy or just any individual or group of individuals. It has to be a community-wide initiative. There has to be this awareness where the people come and say, no more. No more children will be abused. No more children will have to be afraid. We want our children to have a normal and healthy childhood where they feel safe. And the only way we can do that is to raise awareness about the topic so that the predators are afraid and they have nowhere to hide. They're afraid because they know that people are alert and aware, and that they're training and teaching their children, regardless of how vulnerable their situation is, to notice if someone is trying to groom them or someone is acting inappropriately, and to run and tell an adult. So there's no way that this person will find a child in that community that will keep his secret if he decides to approach or prey on that child. So having that is a deterrent, because then the predators will say, okay, I can't reach any of the children in this community. I will move on. I will go away from this community because it is not safe for me to be a predator in this community. This is where we as a community have a role to give that message to anyone who thinks of preying on our children. No, you are not safe in this community, because we will find you and you will be in a lot of trouble. And we will make sure that the law you will get your punishment as the law prescribes.
Nancy, can I say one thing here? When I was in Nashville and I went to visit the prison, and I spoke specifically to a bunch of men that were in prison for rape and sexually molesting children, and I said to them, "What would you say if a child said no?" And they said, we would look for another child that didn't say no. They don't want trouble. They don't want to be caught. So that's why we've got to teach children to say no and speak up.
Absolutely.
Sorry,
and I just say one last thing. No, that's an important point, actually. That really reiterates what I'm trying to say is the more children are armed and prepared to say no and yell and run and get an adult, that's the best deterrent to push these predators away from our children. And I wanted to just say one last thing about what you mentioned. The long-term effects, because again, I'm speaking from a culture that tends to be, or historically has been, more reactive than proactive. The long-term effects of abuse on a person, we know the short-term effect of that child being afraid and not knowing who to trust anymore, and maybe doing bad in school, and maybe withdrawing, and maybe not talking to anyone, and maybe being too scared to tell their parents, and causing a lot of sadness and depression and not knowing how to handle that. But in the long term, once that child becomes an adult, like myself or other victims, the long-term effects can be detrimental. It can affect relationships. It can affect one's image of themselves, self-esteem. It can also, in cases where children are subjected to abuse, unfortunately, some of them may end up being the abusers themselves, because we know there is this cycle of abuse, especially if the issue is not dealt with or resolved. So we know that the long-term effect, short-term and long-term effect on the child, on the family, and on the community and all of society is so big. You know, we as a society, unfortunately, one of, maybe from what I can see, especially with the pandemic, most people like to talk about loss of finances, like how much this pandemic has cost us. Well, child abuse has cost us as a society so much money, so much potential. The loss is so devastating. And the only way we can reverse that or stop that is to take action. And action needs to be greater than words. It needs to be getting up and making a plan and organizing with other people that also believe in the same, you know, that same vision, and making a plan and saying, tomorrow we're going to go to this school and we're going to give the training program to the teachers. The day after, we're going to this village to speak to the children. The day after, I'm going to write an article and I'm going to publish it in the newspaper to raise awareness about this topic or this subject. Action. It's not just about having the sentiment. Take up a pen, make a phone call, organize, get a community together. This is really where I want to leave it, is that it really is great that there is the sentiment. It's great that people, and I think there is very, very few, if anybody in the world, that's going to say child abuse is great. Everyone knows that it's a devastating phenomena, that it's harmful to all of us. From the child all the way up to this, you know, top of the society. But the most important is, what are we going to do about it? What action are we going to take to stop child abuse? What action are we going to take to prevent it from happening to anyone else? This is really what we need to ask ourselves. Thank you.